Okay,
Yep.
we're going on to With Morning Comes Mistfall, which again Martin talks about in his little like introduction to this section. And With Morning Comes Mistfall, along with Second Kind of Loneliness, are the two stories that he said he thought would make or break his career. Initially, he thought they might break because they weren't selling and he had to keep trying, but then they both sold and they both were popular. So they were one of the most important works that he did earlier on that solidified him going toward being a writer. And I think they were both in analog. Second Kind of Loneliness, December 1972, and then Mistfall was published May 1973. It was in contention for both Nebula and Hugo Awards. He didn't win either, but then he still joined like the Hugo and Nebula Losers Club or something, which is a mark
Still
of
a
honor.
good club to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like he wrote those two stories, and a total of 7 in the summer, I think, after he did his masters. Where he'd gone to a science fiction convention and saw how everybody else was writing a lot of stories. He's like, yeah, I got to catch up. And he just like sat down and he was working part time at the time, and then half the day he'd be just typing out stories in his typewriter.
Yeah, he is a very prolific writer. Like if you ever look at a thing, like for all that he publishes slowly, it's because he writes like such long books. He doesn't get as much credit as he deserves.
Mm.
Well, it's only with the last 2 books that he slowed down. He's always been fast about it. It's just like, well, he never had to balance this much going on. Like these short stories, he could just focus on them, finish them, and move on to the next one. But there's a couple here that I would like to read. I haven't read, like the ones that he was mentioning here in that summer.
Like which ones?
Like the last Super Bowl or Nobody Leaves New Pittsburgh. Like that, I don't know if they're available anywhere. Or...
Yeah, I don't know where you'd get those.
Yeah, and he also, I mean, he spent a summer doing news articles, and some of them were published. I'd like to see those, like his coverage.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
We should look that up, see if we can find them somewhere in the net.
Yeah, I'm always disappointed when I
letter he wrote. No, just saying that early letter he wrote to was it Fantastic Four when he was like 6 years old that they published his letter to the artist of the comics, which is from like 1968 or something like that.
Yeah, I think he was saying it's like these characters are not realistic enough. They need to be more gray or something.
Right. I like how you make the bad guys likable. I like that.
Yeah, I'm always disappointed when I hear stories that I haven't read because I spent all last summer, at the library, trying to get everything that he's done, and there's just, so many little things out there.
Yeah, finding Windhaven was hard. Now everything's been republished, which is helpful, but...
Yeah. So yeah, we're going on to With Morning Comes Mistfall, which, as he said, he knew it was going to be one of his big stories when he released it. Lemon Cakes?
5. I said I didn't give 5s, but apparently I was wrong. I just thought it was so beautiful and evocative, and yeah, I loved it.
I'll give it a 4.75. I think I gave Sand Kings a 5, so this is just like one step down from that. But still, it's an amazing story. I love the whole dialogue about science and superstition, and just the world was just inherently creepy and haunting, but there was no real reason for it to be. Just the setting, just the way he wrote it. I love the whole idea of Mistfall and Mist Rising. But I really loved it. It was a great story.
Yeah, I love this story. It's one of my absolute favorites of his, and it's just beautiful. He's got such a knack for atmosphere. So I'd give. Sorry, I forgot the actual rating.
No,
I'd give it a 4.5, a 5.
I'd do probably something like a 4.25. I actually, part of it I'm sure is because I read it right after I'd read The Hero, but I sort of started looking at them both as being sort of similar things in that it's sort of, from the perspective of the characters involved, sort of a nest, like it's a very melancholy and sad thing, like something was destroyed, but sort of, was maybe necessary and had to be done kind of a thing.
Yeah, I'll give it a 4.25. And I mean, I enjoy the story. I just not quite a 5 compared to some of the other works I've seen. And I've read it a few times. It's still good on the reread, but it's not as good as the first read. I don't know, because you kind of know everything's there, and it is a simple story. It's more the message than the story itself that's important.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to do a reading from it. Do we want to do the reading first right now? Or,
sure.
Okay, and just the general idea they're talking about like this world that has apparently like stories of wraiths, which attracts all the tourists and has this whole like almost a mythology there. And this team has come to now investigate and discover once and for all if the wraiths exist.
Yeah,
so and discussion now, right?
Yeah, they stay at there's this one hotel It's the only place people stay. It's on top of a mountain, and so there's the Mistfall, which is hence the name. But the guy who owns the hotel is this big romantic who sort of loves Wraithworld, but the people who stay there are the ones who are trying to investigate it. So we're going to do a quick reading from the very end of the story. I'll be reading Sanders, who's the hotel owner.
And I believe I'll be reading Dubowski, who is the scientist who's trying to debunk the Wraith problem.
Just one question. Why?
It was for truth, to free this planet from ignorance and superstition.
Free Wraithworld? Was it enslaved?
Yes, enslaved by foolish myth, by fear, now this planet will be free and open. We can find out the truth behind those ruins now, without murky legends and half-human wraiths to fog the facts. We can open this planet for colonization. People won't be afraid to come here and live and farm. We've conquered the fear.
There are hundreds of colony worlds. Did you really need another so badly? Must Wraithworld become yet another Earth? You haven't freed Wraithworld. You've destroyed it. You've stolen its wraiths and left an empty planet.
I think you're wrong. Knowledge is what man is all about. People like you have tried to hold back progress since the beginning of time, but they failed, and you failed. Man needs to know.
Maybe, but is that the only thing man needs? I don't think so. I think he also needs mystery, poetry, and romance. I think he needs a few unanswered questions to make him brood and wonder.
This conversation is as pointless as your philosophy. There's no room in my universe for unanswered questions.
Then you live in a very drab universe, Doctor.
And you, Sanders, live in the stink of your own ignorance. Find some new superstitions if you must, but don't try to foist them off on me with your tales and legends. I've got no time for wraiths. Ooh. Good stuff.
Yay.
Yeah.
Are you
I
guys
love
more
that.
with Sanders' point of view or with Dubowski, or where do you lie on the spectrum?
Well, I was just thinking about it, and the truth is that, like, on the one hand, like, one of the reasons I love reading fantasy is that, like, I sympathize with Sanders and with the George R. Martin quote about, like, the differences between fiction and reality and how like, beautiful that can be. But at the same time, like, I don't know, like, I'm planning on going to grad school. I do research, and, like, I like knowing. And I think that there is an argument to be made, a pretty good one in favor of, like, expanding knowledge.
Yeah, I kind of.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I pretty much agree. Like, just personally, I prefer Sanders' vision and his, kind of hopeful wistfulness about it. But it's pretty compelling that, people need to live and farm and drink mist wine. But you kind of think Sanders did bring up that there are so many worlds that are, very scantily colonized. Like, did he really need to, you just wish he didn't have to go there.
Yeah,
I'm definitely in the middle, depending on what they're talking about. But it's almost like there's nothing wrong with people flocking to Loch Ness, to search for Nessie. But if they drain the lake and completely 100% disprove that there's nothing there, like that's doing more harm than hurting than helping anyone.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of having a press conference just to prove, like, that kind of makes sense. Like, you can't, just because you didn't find it, you really haven't proved it unless you've taken all the mist off the planet and searched every cave. He hasn't really proven it, but he's proven it as much as he can, I guess. But it did come across as more hurtful, and I definitely sympathize with Sanders in this case.
Yeah, the line just must have become another Earth, because it's not like they got so many planets and stuff. They don't need to colonize this planet. Doesn't like properly farm it or whatever. There's not even like good setup for it. They get wine out of it later, but he doesn't really care about like the farming or whatever. Like Dubowski's goal is just for knowledge. Now that may not be bad, but the other stuff is just bullshit. He just wants knowledge at all costs and prestige, more likely. The one who was able to do it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think that there's any real necessity, even from his point of view, to have the planet available for, colonization or anything like that. But at the same time, I think that, knowledge is, pursuing knowledge is what, has gotten us and them, who are, significantly further than we are, where they are in the world, right? I mean, you can't turn your back on that.
Yeah. And I agree with that.
Yeah, but you don't have to pursue knowledge in every single cranny and nook hole.
Yeah, but I mean, who decides which? If you find a cranny that you want to pursue,
the person who funded the expedition decides. Right?
Sure,
They decided it was important enough to do that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not like I don't sympathize with Sanders. I mean, I definitely do. But at the same time, it's just sort of like, like I wish you could have your Mist world, and that would be cool. I wish that, no one had decided it was important. But as soon as someone does decide that it matters, then,
as soon as somebody decides to drain Loch Ness, that was a good analogy. If they went and just drained the whole lake.
Well, I mean, they
didn't quite do that
draining
here.
Loch Ness also destroys the lake, right? They didn't destroy anything.
But it's for knowledge. Okay.
Right, but I'm saying that the lake is gone. Like, whatever, people can't go boating or,
I could refill it afterwards.
Well, they drain it. There's no Ness here, then they put it back.
I guess. If they drain it and then immediately put it back or something like that, then I suppose it's basically the same thing. But,
Yeah, the one thing that's sort of a flaw with this story for me is the idea that, like, this press conference would be effective.
Yeah.
Just because, like, I don't know, like, and it's important for the story, and I agree with that. But it's just like, I don't know, unless like future people are really different, then I have no idea why. Like, there are plenty of people who are like, we know there's nothing in Loch Ness. We have thoroughly done this, like, searched and sonared the lake, and there's nothing there. But everyone still believes in it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, like, people are going to believe what they want to believe.
Yeah, it does seem a little unlikely that the press conference would have added quite so much.
Yeah, he could have thrown in something there about, maybe all the things that Dubrovsky had done before, like, kind of pumped up his reputation. So it seemed a little more plausible that he could just come in for a couple months and completely destroy the reputation of the world.
Yeah, if he's sort of like a famous debunker or something, is that like what you're?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that if that's true, then maybe it's a little more reasonable.
Then is the Mythbusters of the 25th century.
Then Dubrovsky next went to the Nightmare Planet to debunk the fact that it's a nightmare planet, and he never
came
back.
Yeah, and it went poorly. Yeah.
Then he went to see the Grishka. He's like, this must be fake. If he actually got that.
Although he doesn't really seem like the field, he doesn't really like the field researchers, so he likes to send other people out when possible.
Yeah, he does seem like the guy who really, misses. I always get this quote wrong: misses the forest for the trees, or misses the trees for the forest. He's so focused on like the details that he didn't even realize if it was morning or night, or dawn or dusk. And that's when Sanders really freaks out on him. He's like, "You've been here for 2 months. You don't know if it's morning or night."
Yeah,
it's just a different. They're coming from two total ends of just personalities and all sorts of spectrums. They're not alike at all.
Yeah, well, Sanders, for example, he only has the fresh brewed coffee. He won't take the instants or synthetics. Kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You can see that's kind of just his personality is along that side of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I like the narrator a lot. Like, we haven't really talked much about him, but it's a nice touch to have him be sort of in the middle.
Yeah.
Like, he sympathizes with Sander and, like, likes the romanticism, I guess. Like, at the end of the story, he still loves the mist wine, which is the planet's export. But at the same time, like, I think he has sort of an understanding of, like, why Dubrovsky does what he does too, like, because, like, and it's true, they're both pretty understandable motivations.
Yeah, Mist Wine is the precursor for Shadow Wine. Don't forget.
True.
I had that just that note there: Mist Wine and Shadow Wine. George is so good at naming wines.
The narrator is George, by the way. I mean, it was even written at a time where he was doing like articles and that kind of stuff. It's like a journalist point of view, so he's just drawing upon his journalist experiences.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
Well, it's
kind of like oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that the journalist, like, you get so caught up in the first couple months that he's there and he's churning out all this work, but at the end of the day, it's a job, and if there's a story, there's a civil war on another planet, he's going to go. It kind of is a good way to pull you out of it. Yeah.
Also, did anyone other than me, the first time they read this, think this was going to go in sort of a Lovecraft direction? Because, like, all the stuff about, like, ancient ruins and mountains and, like, mysterious things, like, has a very, like, they don't ever answer the secret to those ancient ruins. And, like, that always feels very, like, I'm always half expecting it to become Into the Mountains of Madness.
Yeah. There was definitely a part of me who thought that something weird was going to happen.
Or Sanders might kill somebody. Well, he even speculates. He's like, he thought Sanders might kill somebody to cover up, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
They did find that body at the end, the guy who was murdered, and I thought that there was a line or something where, like, Sanders looked at him or something, and I thought that might have been someone that Sanders killed that he thought he got away with. But I don't know if anyone else thought that, or that was just an angry mountain climber.
Definitely possible, though.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think.
Yeah, but the narrator kind of reminded me of. I just wanted to real quick. Just the narrator reminded me of the Great Gatsby a little bit, because he's this sort of guy who's observing all these great people, but he's not. It's not really his story. Sort of like Nick Carraway a little bit. So I don't know if maybe this was his like Great Gatsby in on an alien planet. But there's no Daisy, so maybe not.
I do think that George kind of went out of his way to say that Sanders wasn't the type of guy who was going to kill anyone. It might have been a smart idea if he had, and he definitely was quick to lose his temper, but I just don't see him doing that. I also made a note that Sanders was another sweet fat guy in a George story.
Yeah.
Yeah, then the narrator asks, like, are you just worried about, like, you're losing your business? And then Sanders gets really pissed about that. He's like, I thought you understood.
Yeah, and that sort of comes back to what I was trying to say, I guess, that he understands. The narrator has because he has both like a real job and also this romantic streak, he gets both sides of it in a way that like Sanders is, I mean, they call him a hopeless romantic, and like hopeless is actually like really accurate. He is kind of hopeless and he's somewhat doomed because of it.
Yeah, he doesn't even go into the mist wine business. Like, he's too stubborn or doesn't understand before it's too late. Like, he could have saved his business if he adapted.
Yeah. Like, he also, like, he knew that they were going to go out of business. That's why he was so mad about Dubrovsky. But, like, so, like, it wasn't even him, like, pretending things would get better. He literally just, like, allowed. If he'd bought into the mist wine, he could have maybe kept the hotel going. But through this, like, childish spite almost, he refuses.
And he has a good knowledge of the world. I mean, he shows the narrator around the different places. Like, would you visit Wraith World? It seems like there's some pretty cool stuff there.
In a heartbeat.
Absolutely.
Oh, definitely.
You still want to get lost down there, though.
Yeah.
It'd be freaky as hell.
Although I think
they're just apes. They're just apes walking around.
Yeah, and rock cats or whatever they're called.
And plain devils or something.
Yeah. There's some scary stuff down there.
Swamp lizards.
Lizard lions. I don't know.
I think the creepiest like creation that he mentioned were those trees that blow in the wind when there's no wind. Like, what the hell's that about?
Yeah. Did you think Sanders is an alcoholic? Because he's always putting away 3 drinks before the narrator even had his first.
Yeah,
he is.
And he's kind of red-faced and...
Yeah,
I got that.
Are there any romantics that don't drink? Don't you have to be a drinker to be a romantic?
Yeah.
He's drowning it.
Or die of tuberculosis or something?
So they found apes down there. That was part of the exaggeration. They made some apes down there.
This was written at the height of the Planet of the Apes popularity. Maybe he was working that in.
You have any final comments?
I don't know. This is a beautiful story. Read it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like this one needed. I don't know if they ever did any proper artwork for it, but like Second Kind of Loneliness, they could have done good artwork for Mistfall kind of thing.
Yeah, the mist coming in over the mountains and stuff was really good.
Yeah, when I read, I'm not really great at visualizing, like, when characters are described and things, I just kind of, it goes in one ear and out the other. But this story in particular, just like the Red Mountain and when he's down there and the little pockets of mist would open up, like I could just see it all so clearly.
Yeah, it seems like some of these works would be adapted well into graphic novel format. We were talking about Sand Kings, right? But like just a modern graphic novel of this or Second Kind of Loneliness would be, you'd have nice backdrops for it. So.
Yeah, he has a very visual style. A lot of his stuff is great and should be in graphic novel form.
Just, back to Second Kind of Loneliness, because he discusses these two stories in pairings. He noted how like this one was more of his polished piece, and Second Kind of Loneliness was an open wound. And it was the first story that he ever thought about, like, do I really want to let people read this? He felt vulnerable about it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one, I was trying to think, because the Wraiths kind of, when we first saw them, the guy's telling the story about how he met it in the mist, like, and at that point, we don't know whether or not they're real or not. But it kind of reminded me of Dan Simmons, and if you read the Hyperion books, but there's this one planet that the only creature that lives there they're called ice wraiths and humans. And I'm thinking that maybe Dan Simmons might have read this book and he really liked the idea of wraiths, and he made this world where there was no doubt that they were real. There were these like huge clawed creatures that just hunted humans, and they were
Wow.
really, really creepy. But they this whole planet is just covered in ice, and it's just these giant wraiths things that hunt the few humans that are left. But I was just thinking if there was a connection there. But I do love the Hyperion books, and there seems to be a lot of connections with the whole many worlds, and like each world has its own little thing going on. But that's the only other wraiths in science fiction that I can think of.
Yeah, I can't think of any others.
Well, the ring wraiths, but I don't think they're connected there.
I don't know if they quite count.
Yeah.
So for the second kind of loneliness cover, he was offered, like the artwork he was covered for $200. He didn't buy it at the time because he only earned $250 for the story, and the last time he checked, it was going for $20,000. Although now he should be able to afford it if he wanted to buy it. So
Yeah.
Yeah, at this point. Yeah.
He can buy the art. Maybe he has the
Yeah.
artwork since the publication of Dreamsongs.
Yeah.
You also see that he has he's been known Gardner Dozois for a long time, like all the way back to science fiction conventions, and now they're working together on anthologies.
They've written a lot of books together too. I read a book they co-published with a third author. And I don't actually remember what it was called. It's very good. It's very weird. Hunter's Run.
Is that recent or is that a while back?
It's a 2007 science fiction novel. But so the way it worked was that Gardner Dozois wrote like a third of it in 76, and George in 77 tried to finish it and wrote it up to like a short novel, but then kind of stalled in the early 80s. And then eventually Daniel Abraham, who's also a really good author, rewrote it. And it was published in 2007. It's very good.
That's kind of like Windhaven, where you can tell which parts are George and which parts are Lisa Tuttle.
Yeah, you can definitely
tell. They're both
tell.
good, but you can tell the different styles.
Very different.
Yeah, and it just in this, like, I really liked reading just the intro that he has through here, because he's just talking about his life at the time, and so even second kind of loneliness as we talk, he keeps talking about like had no job, no girl, had no life at the time, and he's like feeling bad about it, so he just drew upon that to write the story.
Yeah.
It's nice to look at where he is now and read this stuff, and he's so honest about it and open, and it's like he went through all that suffering, but I mean he's definitely he's got Paris and he's got his cinema, and it's just cool that he's doing well. I mean the interviews I've heard, he just seems like a really sweet, cool guy, and it's nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.